I'm Dale Devitt, professor of soil and water in the School of Life Sciences, and I mostly do water-related research. I didn't know I was going to have a cover slide. I was jumping right in. I was going to save a slide so we can sit here and wait for a second. So one of my recent studies is looking at the fate of pharmaceuticals in the environment. And of course, Americans are heavily medicated. A typical senior takes 5 medications per day. My own mother took 10. These are the big top 5. The problem is, of course, that they're not fully metabolized in the body, and they end up in our waste and out to the waste stream. They go to the wastewater treatment plant. The plants are not designed to remove pharmaceuticals, so they end up in the wash into the lake. The late 1990s, other researchers found the male carps had become feminized because of the presence of synthetic hormones in birth control pills. So our interest was looking at an environmentally acceptable alternative, which is using the reused water for irrigation purposes. We wanted to look at the fate and transport of pharmaceuticals in turfgrass irrigated systems. So we did a very complicated design in terms of tracking 15 different pharmaceuticals, and we trucked over water. We also did it out on the golf course. What we found was 95 to 99% of the compounds were retained in the root system. Only a very small percentage made it out, less than a gram per hectare. So we think it's a good way to go. Okay. And so I've been actively involved in studying the use of reuse water, treated sewage effluent. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand the relationship between population and the amount of effluent we generate as a city. 30 of the 53 golf courses have transitioned over to using reuse water. The problem is the reuse water has twice the salt load of Colorado River water. So we've worked with the superintendents and with the Toro Corporation and testing a device that could actually assess the stress on plants. We could map out the fairway and actually interpret that as far as nitrogen deficiency or water stress. Other studies, I've been very involved in assessing plant water use in remote basins up in central Nevada associated with the S&WA proposed pipeline, quantifying the water use on a large scale. It's a beautiful area, and of course we'll see how the final decisions are made. But we've used various techniques, remote sensing, leaf level measurements, energy balance, where we actually take measurements 20 times per second on all these various parameters. We link it with our groundwater monitoring. We're interested in how the vegetation is responding to groundwater changes. And we're able to interpret all that and map it. So realize these maps are about 500,000 acres in size. We're able to generate actual water balances, estimate how much water the plants are using, so the state engineer then can close water balances and dole out the amount of water he thinks is right. Been very involved in a statewide climate change project, NSF funded. We have 2 transects, one in the Snake Mountain Range, the other in the Sheep. These are very sophisticated meteorological towers, 14 of them. They measure a wide range of parameters, and here's a view from the base of Wheeler Peak at 11,000 feet. Our towers are situated in distinct plant communities, and we have a very unique setup of our network where we can monitor atmospheric conditions, soil-based vegetation, and all of it's powered by solar energy. We can remotely access the data. We don't have to be there. This is just some air temperature from 3 remote sites on the mountain. What's really neat is we have these internet cameras. We can view anytime. We can see whether there's snow, how much snow, if the snow is melting, if the plants are leafing out, if there's flowering, whatever the conditions are. Some side studies, we're interested in greasewood. It's a deep-rooted shrub, so if they're going to pump groundwater, this is the plant that could become decoupled from the groundwater system. It gives a very unique depression in the groundwater on a daily basis, and this is how we use our students to measure the length of root systems. We also look at big sage, another dominant plant, and we look at the growth rings, and we use that as a proxy to interpret climate change in the past and what kind of conditions have occurred, and can we use that to understand better the influence of climate on these plant communities. And so this solid line is the actual growth ring data This bars are the precipitation. So you can see it does a pretty good job of interpreting the past climate. And so we also use our remote sensing data, which doesn't do bad either. It allows us then to take this data and really move out on a much larger scale. So we can assess this on 500,000 acres. We're interested in the impact of climate warming on cold air movement. So cold air is very dense. It slides down the mountain, confined to very tight ravines. And what we find is at high elevations, we have fewer freezing days and more growing period than we do at lower elevations because that cold air is shifting by. We use these very small sensors. They have data loggers built in them. We can measure temperature. We put them on towers in these remote ravines, and we monitor continuously. And we have about 100 of them up there. And I was going to have someone click a button down here, and this is our three-dimensional interpretation of the cold air moving down, and we're linking it to the physiological response of the plants. So we're trying to understand if warming occurs and it alters cold air drainage, how the plant community will be influenced. We're also looking at the biofuel potential of agaves and cactus species. We're doing it on marginal soil, desert soil, with marginal water, saline water, and treated sewage effluent. And we're using only composted horse manure. The idea is to see if we can be as carbon neutral as possible, so at the end of it all, we actually have a lot of ethanol production. And finally, we like to say we provide life experiences for our students. So with that, I'll stop. Great.